And my animals were all ready. Look.
You're ready. Go right ahead.
All right, welcome to the Town of Signal Mountain Council meeting for Monday, February 8th. I guess we will start with Pledge of Allegiance.
Sorry, just 1 second.
To the flag of the United States
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a moment of silence. And I guess, Carol, we can do a roll call now.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Here.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Here.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Here.
and Mayor Charles Toss, that I understand will be joining us shortly.
He'll be joining us momentarily. All right. We don't have any minutes to approve today. So we will next go to citizens' opportunity to address council. And for anybody that's going to join us, please remember to give us your name and your street address before you begin addressing us.
I have just one person to address. I'll bring him in right now. It may take just a moment. Hey there, Mr. Hollingsworth, can you hear us? I believe you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I had some headphones or some earbuds in that weren't working, I guess.
All right. So if you'll don't mind, just give us your name and address, and we're ready to hear what you got to say.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can barely hear y'all, but I think I did hear name and address. Sure, my name's John Hollingsworth. I live at 938 Signal Road. Is there any other information? Is that it? Just name and address?
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, the reason I was hoping to address you all, and I appreciate the time y'all have allotted for me to speak. I'd sent a letter to Mayor Poss, I guess it was late last week, and Sam and Mayor Poss and Mr. Veal have been nice enough or recommended that I address y'all with basically the contents of that letter. So I work for Winesett Hill Constructors. Our office is in Hickson, Tennessee. We're general contractors. We've been in business since 1985. That's when the company was incorporated, at least. I think they've been in business a little longer than that. But we recently bid the reading room addition to the library. And when we bid that project, we originally thought it was a public bid. Well, it is a public bid, but we thought there were tax dollars involved, not knowing that 100% of the funds came from donations. So we bid the project thinking that, you know, we're the low bidder, we're qualified bidder by the state. We have the insurance requirements, the bonding capacity. We thought we would, you know, if we're the low bid, we'd get that job. So then I guess then it was discovered that the library board was meeting to make a recommendation on a contractor, and they met, I think it was last week, and essentially voted to essentially voted to move forward with the project using J&J construction here in Chattanooga. And I think there were a couple reasons for that we kind of gathered from listening to the library board meeting that I was just hoping I could address at this time. And so the first being that I know there were some concerns with the number of days we put on our bid form. We calculated those days based on the number of days we thought the project would take once we mobilize. In other words, from the day we step foot on site to the day we turn over the project with a certificate of occupancy, we figured those days as 112. The bid form said notice from the notice to proceed. There are usually different dates in an AIA contract, or it's not unusual at least to have different dates in an AIA contract. Occasionally a contract is written where you will have an execution of the contract date, but then you have a notice to proceed after that date. And what that does is it gives you a window of time prior to mobilizing the job site to engage with subcontractors and order materials, especially long lead time items such as the one on this project where there's an elevator and there's also some glue laminate beams that have, a significant lead time. So we didn't figure those days into the days that we put on the bid form because the bid form said notice to proceed, not necessarily the date of execution of contract. So I guess it was confusing for us at the last minute, but we put the number of days down that we thought we would be essentially interrupting the library's operations with construction going on. So that's the first point. I think based on watching the library board's meeting, I think there were concerns that those days, that's not a realistic timeline. I think it is a realistic timeline, assuming we're given the proper amount of time prior to starting the work that's needed in order to order those materials, such as the elevator, the glue laminate beams, millwork. Of course, there's shop drawings and submittals. If we can get all those things organized and ironed out before we actually mobilize to the job site, I think the project could be done close to that time frame. Now, everything can hinge on weather too. I know there's usually a scenario built into a contract that allows for additional days on weather based on the amount of rain and other important things. But not to get too lost in the weeds here, but that is basically essentially what I thought the library board thought was the reason they decided not to choose us. So I wanted to just bring it to the town council and to clarify the 112 days is not essentially the number of days we would need from the execution of contract to the turnover of a certificate of occupancy, but I think it is a realistic time frame for the number of days we would actually be on site.
Can
But
you
there was
tell
some
me,
I'm sorry.
you know how many days J&J said that they're,
I think they were over 200. I believe it's like 250. I don't exactly remember.
so they had a better, do you know, I mean, you may not know this, if they understood, did they misunderstand or were y'all?
I can't speak for J&J. I really don't know.
Yeah.
I know that we put just what we thought was the 112 days being the number of days we thought we would actually be doing construction on site, not to include administration time prior to mobilization. The other things we took from that library board meeting was that they were concerned about quality issues. I get that. It was based, if they thought we were saying we could do it on 112 days, but to be clear on quality issues, our subcontractors, the one who's going to be doing the interior millwork and the interior finish work, they're the largest and most reputable millwork, architectural interior millwork company in town. They've been doing business for 20 plus years. So we would not go into a project of this nature using subcontractors or using skilled labor that we weren't sure of. The people we sought out to bid this work are highly qualified people. The carpenter that we sought out to bid the framing package, they're not just house builders. These are commercial wood framing carpenters. They've been doing it for 20 years. They hung trusses for us 20 years ago on a project on Bonnie Oaks, and they're still doing this kind of work. So I have complete faith that our subcontractors are top top-notch folks in Chattanooga, and quality will not be an issue.
Okay. Does that address, did you get everything?
I believe so. I would just like to finish off by saying, we've been in business 35 years. Our reputation, we work for a lot of folks that live on this mountain. I've done business with folks that live on the mountain who own, I don't want to get too involved, but for almost 10 years, we have worked for the same clients. I really would hope that the library board, considering that our bid was $25,000 approximately less than J&J, that they would reconsider their vote based on that, based on the money itself, but also based on the fact that we're a reputable company. Even though we have not worked with Tinker Mall and the architects are not familiar with us, we are a reputable company. We're not going to produce a project on Signal Mountain where I live that's going to be substandard. I can promise you that. And I think that I wanted to at least present to you all our side of it, because I didn't think during the library board meeting that our company was well represented. So if there's an opportunity to address the board, if J&J wants, I think what would be a good idea if the library board would accept it, if town council will accept it, is if the library board maybe gets to have a meet and greet with both bidders and discuss their bid and discuss their work history, and maybe give them the opportunity to make a more informed decision after speaking with both bidders.
Okay. Well, thank you for addressing us. We'll definitely take that into consideration.
All righty. Thank y'all for having me.
John.
All right, Mayor Poss,
Hey there.
take over.
I've got a new computer. I was trying to join the meeting and it says the meeting host will let you in soon. Sam, do you see that? I had to get on my phone to get in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was only showing as Dell laptop and I was not sure who that was. I thought it might be you, but I wasn't sure. So if that's you, I'll be happy to let you in now.
It might be better on there than my phone. Who knows? Oh, shoot. I have no idea where the camera is. So can y'all hear me?
We can see you from the chin, nose down.
I think we're on his phone right now. There we go.
Oh, yeah. That's my phone. Sorry, guys.
There we go.
I've got a question on that topic, maybe for Harry or Sam, because I watched that meeting after we got the letter from John, the recording of the meeting. One of the things that kept kind of coming up was, they're sitting there trying to.
Hey, Andrew,
Yes.
I don't want to cut you off now, but this is a discussion item for later.
Okay. Thank you.
I think so. And I think that's
Yeah.
probably the appropriate time to.
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm here now.
We can't hear you. Can y'all hear him?
Good, just a moment ago, but then it went out.
I'm going to join back with my phone. Back in on my phone.
Hear you. And like that, he's gone.
I think he's re-entering on his phone.
Can't hear
Try one
you.
more time.
Mhm.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What a mess. I'm going to take this computer back. It's not user error, I'm sure. I take it that we got to the citizens' opportunity to address council.
We got there, and so now we're on to ordinances.
Okay,
Resolution.
thank you.
Resolution, sorry, I'm not looking at my, here we are.
Okay, well, shall we move on? The first resolution we're holding until after the second hearing, I guess, on the ordinance to amend the library board. We can, yeah, so we'll hold that. We'll go to the second one, which is this is the consenting to the renovation project. So it's a resolution of the Signal Mountain Town Council consenting to the renovation project proposed by the Signal Mountain Golf and Country Club. Does anybody have any questions about that? Boyd answered some that we had by email, namely whether the neighborhood would be impacted and also what basically the extent of the renovation was. Does anybody have any other questions?
We do have representatives from the country club available, including the architect, and they're more than happy to discuss if you wish.
I have one procedural question. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
It looks great and they're making improvements, so it's fine. But I wonder, does this trigger any kind of a DRC review?
Yes, they've already, I believe, submitted an application to go to the DRC. They'll have to go through all of the codes inspections and everything else like any other commercial property for that.
So I think any discussion that we might have about aesthetics and that doesn't matter at this point. It's just a matter of the council has to say, we're cool with them going forward. And they're not changing the footprint, in any significant way. They're just making it look better and fixing up the inside.
Right, that's what it seems mostly like. It's interior work. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about this? Okay.
Move to approve.
Any second?
Second.
So I will, as a member, recuse myself from voting. I will give my personal opinion that it'll be a great facelift of that building. Just driving down James Boulevard, it's going to provide wheelchair access, which will be great. Right on the front. Currently, I think they have to sneak in the back if you're in a wheelchair, which isn't really right. And yeah, it'll be a good change, but I will not be voting on this.
Okay. All right, well, we've got a motion and a second. Can we have a vote?
Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner is abstaining. Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay, thank you, guys. The next resolution is a resolution authorizing the town manager to sign the letter of concurrence with determination of de minimis use for town properties adjacent to the State Route 8 improvement project. We had some discussion in a previous meeting about this, and I believe Boyd has discussed the issues with the relevant people involved in the town operations. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments about this project? Or, sorry, this resolution? Okay, I can't see everybody, so speak up if you do. If not, we'll go ahead and, does anybody want to move to approve this?
Move to
Move to
approve.
approve.
We'll say Andrew was first on the draw there, so Dan, you want to second? Okay.
Second.
All right, can we have, do we have any other discussion, or can we go to a vote? All right, we'll go to a vote.
Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan.
Yes.
Yes. All right, the next resolution is an ordinance amending, wait, that's an ordinance. We don't have that, I remember, we didn't have that resolution ready yet.
Correct. We were hoping that we would get the necessary information from EPB to get that in. So we erred on the side of caution and put it on the agenda, but we do not have that. So we'll have to push that. It's really a sole source scenario, but we expect it to be over $10,000. But again, we're hoping that we would have that so we didn't run into a delay on that project, but they did not get it to us.
All right, well, that's fine. We'll hear it at the next meeting. So we have these two ordinances, the second reading for an ordinance amending sections 2-106 and 2-107 and creating a new section 2-108 of the Signal Mountain Town Code.
Charlie?
Yes, sir.
Before we entertain a motion, can I speak about this for just a moment?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. We, as individual council members, are elected by citizens to have fiduciary responsibility to the town of Signal Mountain. And that's why I think this is important that we really think this through. This ordinance that we're about to pass functionally and unnecessarily undermines the role, that role when a council member serves as a liaison. The language of this ordinance seeks to codify something that is already implicit to being a council member. It's implicit. We are council members. This is our role. Nothing we do as individuals represents the council unless it is by ordinance. That's just the way it is. It could also be by resolution, or it could be ceremonially. The mayor serves a ceremonial role many times. And so those are the things that are described. However, anytime we talk about town business as individual council members, we are representing ourselves as council members, and we're subject to the ethics and conduct requirements assigned to the office to which we were elected. If we misuse that privilege, there are prescribed consequences in our municipal code and in Robert's rules. Council member liaisons already do not vote except where overridden by prescriptive law on the committees. This element of not having a vote serves to already allow the actual voice of the committees to speak as a group, regardless of input from a council liaison. I want to look quickly at the practical side of the proposed ordinance change. I've watched several meetings since the last time we met and participated in one myself. In every case, council members participated. Mayor, you even advocated for a particular position the first couple of times you spoke at the BZA meeting. And I have no problem with that because you were elected, at least in part, because you're informed and you have institutional knowledge about zoning issues based on your past service to the town. I think that's a good thing. That's why you're serving on that committee. The third time you spoke, you said it was as a citizen, which was, I understood why you did that. But I noticed that no other citizens had that opportunity. Can any citizen just join at any time when they have what they feel is a relevant thought for a committee meeting? If you're going to keep that part in here, a council member must announce that he or she is speaking as a citizen, then perhaps you should consider requiring all these meetings to have a citizen's opportunity to speak, just like council meetings. If it is general influence of council members on committee proceedings that we are trying to limit, then consider that the current accepted practice of council members lobbying for specific people that they have recruited to specific committees is a far greater method of placing a thumb on the scale to determine a committee's future direction and decisions. Some of us here, even new members, have already done that, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's okay. You're doing it for a reason. Suzanne, you were in a meeting and you spoke helpful, useful information. It was all good. What we're about to do, if we vote for this, is codify an unnecessary contrivance. And I'm asking you to reconsider this and table this vote for at least one more council meeting so that we can discuss these points a bit further.
I was cognizant of this ordinance when we had the BZA meeting, and they wanted to discuss a particular past issue. And I tried to just, I tried not to give them my thoughts. I don't think I gave them my thoughts, other than referring that when they were talking about whether they had to do minutes, referring them to the charter, which I think would have been appropriate as a town council member to make sure that they're complying with what the charter requires. So I was cognizant of this. It is difficult, but I think our role is not to be involved in deliberations. And in the BZA, I think that was I don't think that's a normal meeting for the BZA. You watched it. I don't think that's the first BZA meeting I've had or seen, but I don't think their meetings are typically to rehash or discuss past issues, and more to address current issues that for zoning appeals. So I would not be participating in deliberation about a zoning appeal because of this, and because I'm just a liaison and not a member. I mean, if you want to have further discussion about it, I don't particularly have a problem tabling this. I think everybody kind of has an idea of what their role is supposed to be. We've rehashed that a little bit. So if this waits to become final for a meeting, that's fine. I'm not sure. I mean, any discussion is going to be amongst the 5 of us in a public meeting. So we could do it now. We could do it at the next meeting. Anybody else? I can't see everybody.
We
So I
have-
don't know who wants to talk, but I see Dan. Dan has something to say. So if nobody else does, go ahead, Dan.
I would just
Meetings.
say that, I mean, I would say we have discussed it. Dan makes some good points. But I would prefer we discuss it now rather than table it, unless Dan's suggesting that he'd have some changes to this, or.
I did not make a motion. I think you guys should make the motion, because my position's been clear on this from the beginning to table it, and I'm not going to make that motion. I would hope one of you would. Andrew, have you participated in a committee meeting yet?
I have not.
So you're about to change code on something that you haven't participated in yet.
No,
You see what I
not
mean?
as a council member.
Right. Our role as a council member is as an elected fiduciary. If our role is not to participate, then what are we here for? Now, yeah. I think this
I
is
just-
defined, and we're doing something that's contrived and answers a question that doesn't answers a problem that doesn't exist unless somebody steps out of bounds. And if someone steps out of bounds, there are already ways to deal with that. You're creating a situation that's limiting in a negative way.
What I would just say is, like, I'm not as concerned about our role, right? It's not, to me, the committees and boards are there to help us. They're there to help us hear the voice of citizens. We already know our own voice, and ultimately, with the way our government works, we get the final say anyway.
Well, you
So,
don't get to vote in the committees.
but the committee makes, for the most part, a recommendation to council. You don't have to agree with that recommendation. You can vote against it.
Kind of see that. I mean, I'm frankly, I'm getting a little bit confused. With this, but I kind of see that too. I mean, because we do have the final say.
Right. But you participated in the last committee meeting that you were in, and it was perfectly normal.
I know, and I
need
think
to
that
say,
makes sense too. But why am I serving on the MAC board? Because I have a background in the service they provide our community. I was, appointed
That's
to
right.
that board because I'm bringing something to the table because of my past experience.
and you're a council member.
And I'm also a
And
council
that
member.
comes, yeah, and that comes with some responsibility.
But I think the problem here is that we're not, and maybe this is just my thought, but we're not really supposed to be active board members. We're really supposed to be liaisons, so that if we're really just supposed to represent the council in terms of listening, finding out what they're doing, taking the word back to the council, addressing issues that they may have about proper procedure, things like that. Is this what the council wants?
But that's a council member doing that.
I'm sorry?
But that's a council member doing that.
Right. I'm not deliberating, or you can participate in discussion as a citizen. So Susanna is, has something to offer as a citizen to the MAC during board meetings, and she can do that. This does not prevent her from doing that, providing her input as a citizen. The problem is when a town council member speaks under the guise of being a town council member, it has a little more weight in terms of supposedly representing what the entire town council might want. So if she's making recommendations and deliberating as a town council member, then she's acting for everybody. And I think that's what this is trying to prevent. I don't think our role is supposed to be active members. So look,
But-
I
Well, wait.
Yeah.
I think you made a false premise there, Charlie. Any council member that says they're speaking for the council is misrepresenting themselves. I don't think that's what anybody does.
No,
Any
it
council
doesn't.
member that says I'm representing myself as an elected council member is doing exactly what they were elected to do.
No, I'm not saying that they're saying, hey, I speak for the council when I say you really should do this instead of that. They're not necessarily saying that, but if I go to a BZA meeting and say, hey guys, I think that you ought to give this property owner a break and let them have this variance that they're requesting. I mean, why not? Who's it going to hurt? Whatever. I shouldn't be doing that. That's something that the BZA should do, and I
Yeah.
should observe. And if I feel like the BZA's overstepped their bounds, that they're doing something the BZA is not authorized to do, I can speak up. If I feel like that if they ask me, hey, we want you to address this issue, can you take it back to the council? And that happened at the BZA meeting, and you saw that. And I said, I'm going to go bring this back to the planning commission, and then that'll go to the town council. That's, I think, what our role is, not to get in and say, yeah, you really should or shouldn't grant this variance.
So did you do that as a council member or as a citizen? And could any citizen have done that? And does that opportunity exist?
Done what? Could any citizen?
Made that recommendation saying, I'm going to take it back. You did that as a council member,
Well,
not
that's what
as
I'm
a
supposed to
citizen.
do. I know that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what the liaison is supposed
I
to do.
agree. I
Right.
agree.
Right.
That's
the
as
role
a
of the
council
council.
member.
That's the role of the council member liaison, is to take stuff back to the town council. But it's not to deliberate in the meetings and say, and give them my opinion as to whether they should grant a variance or not. So if if it was my
When-
neighbor and I wanted to participate in a, go in and say, I don't think that they should be able to have this variance because it's going to affect my property value and that sort of thing, I can do that. That's as a citizen, not as a town council member, but I need to make that clear that that's my opinion as a citizen. So I don't know.
In discussions, right, in discussions, your opinion exists. Whether or not you're a council member, this opinion that we're talking about might be an opinion to the board or committee that I don't think the council is going to go for this reason, because of these other things that we have done as a council. That's you speaking as a council member, not for the council. It's still your opinion. You don't lose your opinion. You don't lose your fiduciary responsibility and all the ethics that come with that when you become a liaison. That's why I think this is a contrivance. And why do we need this when we already have ethics and Robert's rules and all these things that exist to keep a council member, one, from controlling a meeting, and two, the council member doesn't vote?
I kind of think we need this because of this discussion we're having. Because without some clarity that this provides, council members don't really know what they should or shouldn't do at a meeting. And again, I respected your opinion, I still do, your opinion that you wanted to participate in meetings to be able to talk about issues that are going on. And so my original rendering of this wouldn't have permitted that unless you were asked to give an opinion. And I changed it so that it said, you can participate during the time for citizen participation. We're a little more structured with the town council. We have it on the agenda. It says citizens' opportunity to address the council. You go to the BCA meeting and it doesn't, who knows when that opportunity is, but you need to just make it clear if you're going to participate that you're not doing so as a town council member. But it doesn't prevent you from being involved in discussing issues so long as you make it clear that you're not doing that as a member of the town council. So,
but in the natural course of things, you didn't do that for the first two times you spoke last time. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think the way you operated there was absolutely natural and right. The way Susanna operated was natural and right. The way I've seen Vicky operate with the library board is absolutely natural and within the flow of a meeting. This puts a contrivance there, which is unnecessary.
I don't think I was really, I don't know. I don't remember the meeting that well. I looked at it again, but I don't think I was really participating. I tried not to participate in the discussion. Because I didn't think I should. But, if I didn't do it correctly, then I should do it correctly. Because I think that, look, we can disagree. Obviously, there's things that we will always disagree on. And this may be one of those things. But I just think that our role should be clearly defined so that, say the next group of 5 that takes over as town council members down the road, they know what their role is supposed to be as a liaison. So when they go to these meetings, they know that they're really supposed to just be listening and reporting back to the council and not providing opinions or getting heavily involved in the discussion unless they make it clear that they're doing so as a citizen of the town rather than a town council member.
And the planning commission
Explain.
and the library board are different in that we do have a vote, right? So
Correct.
I think that's important. And really, I think that what we're talking about is undue influence on issues, possibly. That's where we're kind of skirting around. So that's something that I think is important to consider. We want to make sure that
So,
a board meets, that we are there to listen, we're there to support, we are there to answer questions. And, but if there are issues where there could be disagreements between the board, let that process of meetings happen with us as town council members being liaisons, so that the process can happen with the folks who are designated board members, so we can get the best and most clear decision of citizens in our town. We know what we think. We're just going to bring it back to the board. I like the idea of having the opportunity to have a clear idea of what other people besides me think, even if I don't agree with it, because that gives me the opportunity to know and think and question, and then come back as a member of the board, and we can have an informed decision based on what they want.
And Dan,
Nikki?
you
Yes,
make
sir.
a great point about, we always have the citizens time to address. And that's not always present, or almost never present in some of these committee and board meetings for a citizen to speak up. And maybe that's something, I don't know if that would need to be an ordinance or just a simple resolution, but that we would like to see the opportunity for folks to, and I think it's probably already there if people ask, of course. No.
No, that's not there. And Andrew, would you agree? You don't have to agree, but choosing people who hold your opinion to be on a board is of much greater sway than a council member with everything we say scrutinized and being unable to vote. Choosing those citizens is of much greater sway. And that's something, and I don't think this is a problem, but that's something you're actually actively doing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do think that's much more sway, of course. But why put another straw on the camel's back when you can avoid it?
Because this isn't a straw, because you don't vote, in your opinion. I'm just telling you, if you haven't participated, I've participated in many committee meetings. Yeah, I think this is a contrived situation. And Vicky, I don't know if you've done any besides the library. Is that the only one you've done? Yeah, so you haven't actually, go ahead.
I'm confused, because if I recall, I remember watching some old meetings where you brought up this very issue. You brought it up in my first meeting as an issue that should be addressed. And if the language, again, if the language is not agreeable, I'd love for you to present some alternate language.
That's my point. I don't think the language is agreeable. I think this extra contrivance is a step too far.
I think what would help me understand your position better is for you to make some recommendations about how you think it needs to read. Because I'm okay. I mean, maybe I have inappropriately inserted recommendations or an opinion in a MAC board meeting based on my experience, when I should have said, I'm speaking as a citizen right now. But moving forward, I am perfectly okay to say, now, I'm going to give you my opinion, but I'm speaking just as Susanna Murdoch, a private citizen, not as a council member. I mean, I think that's okay. I don't think that's asking very much, and it's really not that hard to do. I'm just kind of, I'm really, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, to tell all of you the truth on this.
Yeah, I think it kind of boils down to me, for me to just clarifying what our role is really supposed to be. And I think, and I'm repeating, I guess, what Andrew said, but I mean, we put these citizen boards together and expect them to do the job that that board requires, not us. I don't think we're supposed to be on the board to make things happen. And if we're going to go to board meetings and participate in deliberations, then I think we're inserting ourselves in the board. And I don't think that's the intent. Personally, I don't think that's the intent. I think this clarifies that, to make that not the intent. And we may not all agree as to whether or not that is the intent of being a council member liaison. And that might be the problem. Like I said, sometimes we'll just disagree on things, and it may be that Dan and I disagree on what the role of a council member liaison should be.
I like the idea of giving us, tabling this until next meeting and giving council member Landrum opportunity to look at it and to give us his thoughts and suggestions so that we can be very clear about how we vote. I think that would be a great idea.
I think that would help me too.
All right, so can I just make a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we table this issue in our next meeting in order to give council member Landrum the opportunity to provide us with clarifying ideas from his position.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and have a vote on it. And one thing I will mention too before we have a vote, I was thinking that when we discussed this the last time, we were going to add something about the library. So like in 2106, at the end, it says, unless required by superior law, as in the case of the planning commission. I thought we were going to add in the library board, but maybe
it says in the case of the planning commission and in the case of the library board, a council member liaison to a board, committee, or commission is not a member of the board.
I think Charlie's looking at the sentence right above that one where we also wanted to add it. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, you're right. And it's at the last sentence of 2-106.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So just for clarification, when this resolution or ordinance comes back, it should have that changed in the last sentence of 2-106. Whoever does that. All right, so we have a motion and a second on tabling this ordinance till the next meeting. Let's have a vote on that.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Council Member Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Council Member Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Council Member Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay, the next is an ordinance to amend section 2-9011 of the Signal Mountain Town Code so as to increase the number of members on the Public Library Board of Directors. Do we need any discussion on that? So do we need a motion? I guess we have a motion to approve that.
I so move to approve.
We have a second. All right, any discussion?
All right, who was the second?
And
I think Dan tried before me, but he was on mute, so he can get it.
gotta be quick on the draw on these.
I know.
All right, so do we have any discussion? All right, let's go ahead and have a vote then.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Council Member Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Council Member Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Council Member Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Yes. Okay, so we'll go back to our ordinances. So now, when it comes to the library board, these go to 11.
So that would mean resolution A, if we can go back to that.
That's the one, is that the one appointing Barbara McLaughlin?
Yes, that's the one. Yes. Yeah, do you want me to read it or are you gonna read it? I don't know. who
You
to
can
read
read it, sure.
it. Resolution appointing Barbara McLaughlin as a member of the Town of Cedar Mountain Library Board.
Do we have a motion for that?
Motion to approve.
A second.
All right, any discussion? Okay. Can we have a vote on it?
Well, Bo, you're muted. I think Bo was trying to say something.
Sorry. If I could, just as a point of clarification, why there's two resolutions. We do have two positions that are vacated and being filled, and then the two new ones. And then you have a provision that limits the number of terms that can expire in any given year. So we've tried to align all of that. The position that Barbara McLaughlin is being appointed to was the first one vacated, I believe by Maggie Green, and she was the first person to apply. So we just took that and assigned her to that term. The major significance to that is she's completing a term, and then we'll be able to serve 2 full terms thereafter, because the members are restricted to 2 3-year terms for the library board. So just wanted to explain why the terms were as they are in these resolutions and how the determination was made on that appointment.
Okay, thank
For the
you.
record.
All right. Let's go ahead and have a vote.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Foss.
Yes. Vicky, do you want to read the next resolution?
I can. Let me see here. A resolution appointing Ronald Smith, Laura Beckler, and Clifton Henry as members of the Town of Signal Mountain Library Board.
Motion to approve.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, any discussion? As we'll see, this one, these terms expire in 2023. So these are the first of the 3-year terms, I guess. All right, let's have a vote on it then.
Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Vicky Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Foss.
Yes. Okay, we are on to discussion. Before we do that, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Sydney Selman, who's a senior at University of Tennessee, who texted me during our meeting. And since I'm using my phone for this, it popped up on my phone that she got admitted to one of the, I don't know, top 20 law schools in the country with scholarship money. So I am so proud of her. She was a mock trial student of mine since the 9th grade. She's now helping coach our team at Signal Mountain High School, and she is tearing it up in her law school applications and getting in everywhere. So I am so proud of Sydney.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's go on. We were going to discuss the library expansion project. I was late, obviously, came in during the middle of the Mr. Hollingsworth, I think his name is, who was talking about the issue with the library board. I was going to come in like the movies and say objection. Came on, but I didn't interrupt him. I read his letter. I understand that there were some issues there, and I don't know if anybody has any comments or discussion about this whole issue. I can turn it over to Vicky. She probably was there for that meeting. So you can let us know your thoughts. I think you're muted.
You're muted, Vicky.
Unfortunately, I was at the newly elected officials training that evening, so I wasn't there. But I have read the letter. I think that I think it would be a good thing to let the library board have a discussion about this. I know that what we're really wanting to do is get the construction project started so that we can have it ready to go this summer. That would be such an exciting thing to have, to offer citizens when people are, we have more folks getting vaccinated, the capacity to have people in buildings again. So I think that's a real motivating factor. So what I don't know is the reasons that one was chosen over the other. I don't know if somebody else was there that would know that, but I do think it would warrant conversation. Out of kindness, yeah.
I agree with you. I think that decisions like this have to be fair and reasonable, and maybe the same ultimate decision will be made. But if there was a mistake in understanding about their bid, then it would be reasonable and fair to get that clarification and then deliberate again. And you may come to the same conclusion for other reasons. There were 2 reasons why they weren't chosen, but at least it gives them a fair opportunity. So I agree with you.
This is the, yeah, go ahead, Boyd.
I'm sorry, if I may, I just want to let you know that the chair of the library board is available on the call if you'd like to speak with him.
I think that would be a good
As
idea.
is Karen.
Yeah.
We
I
bring
think
them both in?
come on would be a good idea.
Is that what I will bring them in right now.
Awesome.
And positions, at least for the record.
Mhm.
Hey, Britt, can you hear us?
I can.
Great. I think Karen is still coming in.
Brett, if you would, just for the record, state your name and position, and then thereafter, Karen, if you would do the same, please.
My name is Brett Reynolds. I'm the president of the library board.
Karen's still connecting to audio. Karen is still coming in.
I'm here.
Okay, I think you can introduce yourself, Ms. Glendenning.
Brett, if you would, just for the record,
And
state
Karen, if you have your YouTube feed on, would you mute that, please?
and if you would do the same, please.
My name is Brett Reynolds. I'm the
Thank you.
Yeah, Karen, just state your name and position for the record.
I'm Karen Glendenning. I'm the librarian.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were just discussing this the library board project, and the one bidder who wrote a letter and indicated there may have been a mistake in understanding, and so if you guys want to explain your position on that, that would be great. We can start with either one of you.
It needs to be Britt because I didn't have a vote.
Okay, let's have Britt then.
So regarding the potential for mistaken understanding, I think you're referring to the timeline explanation that Mr. Hollingsworth provided.
That's right.
And so I can't say that I have a clearer understanding of what his projected timeline is. I really just have more questions about why there's such a differential in what was presented on the bid versus after the bid was rejected. But more importantly, I was responding to the guidance provided by the architects at Tinker Ma and their experience in the business with similar projects, and that the projected timeline that was stated on the bid seemed unrealistic. And so that sort of started a cascade of eroding confidence in ones that in comparing that to the J&J and comparing past projects from both builders. We decided that J&J seemed like a more appropriate builder for the project.
Karen, do you have anything to add?
No, I think he explained that fine. I do think that John maybe was misunderstood, because we really thought that 112 days seemed so much shorter than the other bid. But when he explained that, he meant that 112 days started when they actually started working at the library. That explained it to me.
Does anybody have any questions of either Karen or Britt?
I do, not necessarily of them, maybe for Harry or Sam. I watched the meeting, and one of the things I noticed, Karen in particular, was frustration a little bit with, you guys had these good questions about, hey, we've got these two bids, very different in one major respect, right? And how do we reconcile that and understand it better, and ask for clarification? And it seemed like, Sam was saying, and this is, I'm not an expert on this, that's why I say Harry and Sam, are we able to, John mentioned having both of them present to the library board or be in a meeting. Maybe that's not allowed under law, but are we able to ask clarification questions on timeline? And get a clearer picture, so we know we're comparing apples to apples, instead of this 112 that sounds like more closer to the actual other timeline when you add in order times and execution of contract up to boots on the ground, I guess is what John had said, 112 days.
I think that was the issue. That was the problem, was that we were not able to talk to the contractors. We had to make a decision on the bid without discussing anything with them.
Well, I think that's the bid process. I mean,
Can they not submit additional questions as part of the process, or to all of them?
The RFP should have the information that is needed to make a decision. Our ordinance states that although the town would have the right to reject any and all bids, the bid is to be awarded to, and I'll quote, the lowest responsible bidder submitting the best bid. So it's not a comparison of which one of them has the best bid. It's who is the lowest responsible bidder. It's certainly not clear cut that you always have to take the lowest bidder, but you have to be very careful if the lowest bidder is not shown to be unreliable or not qualified. Then you better have some very serious or very better have some data to establish why the low bidder is not qualified.
So one of the things Karen had mentioned that would have been helpful was like customer testimonials. So I'm going to just say that I don't know anything about J&J, and I'm sure they do an awesome job, but we, in my business, we do work with Wineset Hill. So as a citizen, I'll speak from experience in that matter.
Hold on, Andrew. I think this might not be the appropriate forum for that.
Okay.
I mean, I can defer that to Harry, but I'm not sure that we are deliberating on their decision right now.
Well, if in the, John's request, I guess, was that they reconsider their recommendation, wasn't recommending anything for us. So my understanding was we're discussing whether we could get the library board additional information, which I thought we might be able to do through some requesting additional questions or.
I read an MTAS decision on something similar to this, not totally similar, but some they addressed some of the issues, and they were talking about a bid process where one of the decisions was made based on reputation, and they had a bunch of examples of prior projects that one of the contractors had done where they didn't do a good job, they weren't timely, what have you. And those were all factored in as reasons why they did or didn't choose whoever they, rejected. So I think that the library board can consider those sorts of things at their meeting. And it may be that the architect is in a good position to get information for the library board if they don't, or they are not able to investigate themselves. Plus, I suppose the bidders could ask for people that they've done projects for to come in and give input to the library board. And that process I'm not totally familiar with, but I suspect that's how it can happen. I think what we should consider for tonight is, should the library board, can they and should they go back and deliberate again, given the fact that there appeared to be somewhat of a misunderstanding as to the number of days that one contractor could complete the project. And again, that may or may not have been a significant deciding factor. And the library board may or may not reach the same conclusion after they re-deliberate based on having more information. Go ahead, Dan.
So, with the RFP, I mean, did it have specific language regarding the timeline? Like, what was the cause of this disparity with the two companies that submitted proposals? I mean, and what is standard in the industry? Is there, why did that happen? I mean, I don't prepare bids and do these kinds of things, but it's interesting to me that they interpreted the RFP in such a different way. Maybe the language of the RFP needs to be more specific.
It sounds like it's too late for that now.
Right.
The language in the RFP is what we've used on many occasions, and I don't know that this has come up. It does say, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, that the timeline is from the notice to proceed. And
to time of completion.
Generally,
well, we have two people talking at the same time. Sam, I think.
No, I was only concurring with what Boyd was saying.
Okay.
So the timeline was to be from the notice to proceed, and I think Mr. Hollingsworth's position is that the notice to proceed does not have to be basically concurrent with the award of the contract, and that was what he anticipated, that the notice to proceed would come later at an agreed upon time. And from that time, his timeline would be appropriate. And I think the other contractor, as I understand it, was more of a notice to proceed would come immediately upon contract award. So that's the difference in their two understandings. Again, as I understand it, I can't speak for any of them, but that's my understanding through trying to work through this. And I would just point out that, ultimately we can, or you can refer back to the library board or whatever you choose to do. But ultimately, the decision to award the contract will fall to council. So the process should also, to the extent possible, resolve questions or concerns that council has, to the degree we're able to do that.
I have a question for Harry, and that is, can we ask the library board to go back and deliberate their decision, given this letter that Mr. Hollingsworth wrote and his comments tonight and clarification? Can we ask them to go back and deliberate?
Yes, I think you can, but it's not, as Boyd just said, the decision is not theirs. The decision is the town council's.
Well, Harry, so you were reading from the ordinance where it says the lowest bid must be awarded.
The lowest responsible bidder.
The lowest responsible bidder should be awarded the contract.
Correct.
And if we don't do that and we go with somebody else who is more expensive, does the bidder who is not awarded the contract have any recourse?
Yeah, he would have recourse. I can't tell you right now precisely what that is, but certainly.
Susanna, I think there's a couple things to me, Harry. I understand we do get the final say on it, but as a council member, this money for this is coming from, not from town funds, right? This is coming from
Correct.
the board who are representing members, who have contributed, and they better understand their desires. So I would not feel comfortable going against, unless it's a legal thing, as Susanna just mentioned, going against the recommendation. They know better what the project needs than we do. But to the extent that there was some misconceptions, and per the language Harry just mentioned, having a day difference of 112, and I can't remember what the other one was, Britt, but 200 something
I think
days
it's 250.
would seem to be a
250.
quality,
Yeah.
thing when you look at it just as apples to apples, which it wasn't, I guess. And so I would feel more comfortable if they were able to reconsider and take another look at it, and like Charlie said, maybe come up with the same decision. But.
And Harry, can I ask you a question too
Sure.
about the wording, the word responsible, when you talk about the lowest responsible bidder? Can you give an explanation about what the word responsible entails in this capacity in a legal manner?
Typically, for a company not to be a responsible bidder, there would have to be some sort of evidence of either failure to complete jobs, or not having the financial wherewithal, or perhaps a brand spanking new company with no history of.
How could we know that if we can't ask any questions?
There you go.
Well,
And if I could address that, I think,
I don't-
Andrew asked that question a few minutes ago. I just wanted to, my comments were mainly trying to emphasize that because we have strict rules against being able to negotiate prior to the award of a contract. And so I was meaning that we had to be careful. At the time, I was not sure whether that could happen or not, but I wanted to make sure it was clear that we didn't get ourselves into a situation where it could appear that we were negotiating. So that was kind of where I was coming from when I made the comments that I did during the meeting.
So now I'm wondering about when Mr. Hollingsworth spoke to us as a citizen, was he in a double capacity? Was that appropriate? I mean, as a new council member, I'm just wondering, Was that kind of a double-edged sword? And
I think it was appropriate for him to speak as a citizen early on. I don't think it would have been appropriate for him to speak during this discussion,
okay,
unless they were both here.
okay. Thank you.
It was a double-edged sword though. But yeah. Okay, so let's I don't know if we need to vote on this. I mean, I think at least several of us feel like the library board needs to just take this new information back with this clarification and consider this again. Do we need to vote on that? Can we just ask the library board to do that and as soon as they can so they can get moving on their project?
You probably need to move to defer this decision until it can be looked at again by the library board.
Okay. And I'm going to talk to, oh, Dan has a question.
Yeah. I'd like to know if that's Britt. How do you feel about that?
I was going to ask the same question.
Well, so I'll clarify that the timeline discrepancy was just the first red flag, and I also had some misgivings about allowing the input or even considering his letter after the fact when J&J didn't have a similar benefit. And so it gets very subjective when we try to qualify these two bidders outside of the RFP process while following the rules and expecting them to follow the rules. And not being versed in vetting builders, we relied heavily on our architects to do that. And so they came to the meeting prepared and they spent some time looking at both builders' websites.
Could they have asked, can they communicate, Harry, with people submitting bids? No?
The architects on the board?
Yeah, the architects. Yeah.
No, I don't think that's a good idea at all.
I don't think they're not on the board,
architects
are
on
they?
the budget. No,
No, but they didn't. They were very careful not to make any judgments when they
Mhm.
helped us. They just helped us understand what the contract said, but they did not favor one over the other.
But they did research both builders and they provided evidence that they could find about their past
Just-
experience and the projects they're involved in.
Ju-
And
yeah,
so,
just websites.
right. And so that came down to, in part, and I mentioned this in our consideration, it came down to, in part, to which builder did a better job of representing his experience as pertained to this project. And, we noted that there was little, if any, evidence that Winsett Hills had worked on similar projects. They do primarily gas stations and strip malls and chain restaurants, and there were a number of beautiful public buildings that J&J had constructed, and they sort of present themselves as pursuing two very different markets. And so the evidence on their own website were what ultimately convinced us that J&J appeared to have much more experience and be more qualified in this type of project.
Hey, Brett, and I think I know the answer to this, but the money that that we're spending on this are funds that the library committee raised, correct?
That's correct.
So, Harry, do the same rules apply? Because these aren't taxpayer dollars, even though we're kind of having oversight of the project. You're nodding yes.
Yeah, the same rules apply. This is town property.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
I have a question for Britt. So in considering the two companies and looking again, if we send it back to deliberate for you guys to look over everything again, is there enough information that is new that is going to give you the capacity to make a different, or a more informed decision? Or do you see that that the company that you've selected is the one that is ultimately going to be selected a second time. I'm just thinking it's saving your time. I don't even know if I'm allowed to ask, but I'm just.
Well,
Can I ask that?
again,
Yeah.
so right, again, I'm conflicted on how much to pay attention to Mr. Hollingsworth's letter after the fact. I don't know how fair it is to step outside of the lines of the RFP or the RFQ and ask or allow his additional input without doing the same for J&J. But that being said, he didn't answer my questions about he said, I didn't really mean that when he's about the 112 days. And he really kind of went into an esoteric discussion about starting the construction, not only after everything was agreed upon, but after they had access to materials, and started making situations that may or may not be within his control, not count. And J&J was owning the entire process. And they were saying, we'll do what it takes to find the materials and to be ready and to complete the project in this concrete number of days. So if anything, that explanation sort of cemented my confidence in J&J in this.
May I speak, Charlie?
You may.
The input that's coming from Britt right now is exactly the kind of input that the council needs. It's the council's decision. And I do recognize and thrilled that the money's been raised outside. This wouldn't be happening right now, most likely. But that money will, just to clarify, that money will need to be transferred to the town through perhaps even some sort of an MOA or something before this even gets underway. And I know one of the concerns of the library is to not make this take any longer than it has to. It already has to take a little longer because it's a municipality. It's our call. I'm not sure sending this back doesn't open up a whole other can of worms in doing it this way. I guess, Harry, if you can't answer this, then don't. But are you comfortable with the recommendation the library has given us is not putting us in jeopardy because of the difference in the fee and what the cost is?
I am not completely comfortable with that, because what the town council has to decide is has it been established that the low bidder is not a responsible bidder? Not are they best in all
I don't know,
not are they best in all respects.
I don't know, Mr. Hollings. Is it part of this, though, when the RFP is responded to? This can happen at any time. If there was confusion on the part of the bidder as far as reading the RFP, that's also a data point.
That's also what?
It seems to me that would also serve as a data point, because it was the same RFP and there's not supposed to be discussion with them. If they responded differently, and I go ahead, Karen.
Well, I was just going to say that I'm not sure that the library board members understood that they had to choose somebody that, and using that responsible term, I think the library board understood that they could choose whichever one they wanted. It didn't make any difference whether it was the most expensive or the least expensive. They just chose the one they liked the best. They didn't have to consider whether or not it was a responsible bid. I'm not sure that was, I know that was never mentioned. And maybe it should have been, because it might have made a difference. Especially if they thought there was some liability. I don't think anybody ever thought there was any liability. I think it was we just assumed that they could choose whichever one they wanted, regardless of how much the difference in price was.
I will also add that while I very much respect Britt Reynolds and his opinions are only one person on the board. And again, you may come to the same conclusion, but so that we are operating as honestly and fairly to all the bidders as we can, I think it's appropriate for the library board to go back with the same information, with the clarification that this person isn't committing to a particular start date, but once that start date happens, it'll be 112 days. Whatever, however you want to take that, you may, and deliberate with that information, and maybe no new information, but just that clarification, and come to whatever conclusion you do, and then come back to us with that recommendation. I think that's the appropriate way, so that we made sure that this has been done as honestly and fairly as possible.
Plus you have 4 new board members, so.
Well, we don't, but I do think that this consideration of whether or not this is a responsible bid is something that needs to be really clarified, because I don't think anybody understood that as a qualification.
I agree. If that's the primary concern, then a clarification of timeline doesn't do much for helping us decide whether this is a responsible bidder or not. I mean, if that's the question at hand, and we need to be able to demonstrate which bidder, if any, is responsible and which is not, what criteria do we use for that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say that responsible is a fairly broad term, and it could encompass a lot of different things. If you don't have confidence because they are, you think they're gonna promise something they'll do too quickly, then, or too long. If it's going to take too long, it could be the other end of that. I think that is something that goes into the question of responsibility. So it isn't just, if you think they're upstanding citizens, it's the whole thing.
Right. Well, the word responsible isn't analog. It's not a black and white thing. Who's responsible, who's irresponsible.
Yeah.
There are some, the ordinance does give some things to be considered in determining whether what the lowest responsible bidder submitting the best bid should be. And there are, 11 or 12 of them. The ability, capacity, and skill of the bidder to perform the contract or provide the service, whether the bidder can perform the contract or provide the service promptly or within the time specified without delay or interference, the character, integrity, reputation, judgment, experience, and efficiency of the bidder, the quality of performance of previous contracts or services, the previous and existing compliance by the bidder with laws and ordinance, that kind of language.
And how do you find out any of those answers to any of those questions if you can't ask?
Well, the architects apparently have been able to find some information.
They just went to the website.
I hate to use the word suggest, but to answer those questions, I would suggest contacting some of the people that they've worked for.
Well, we asked if we could do that, and we were told no.
No, I don't recall that. You can, if someone puts down a company as a reference, whether it's by displaying them on their website or during the RFP process, the idea being that provides you with sources of information and nothing to prevent you from contacting people that they've worked for in the past.
So let's kind of come to a conclusion here.
Mhm.
And I'll just, I don't know if Vicky has changed her mind.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if this would, I know we can't submit additional questions. Can you kill the RFP and do a new one that has submission of a timeline as a detailed timeline as a new request in addition to the information that is already there, or what would be the problems with that?
I think in that case, we would basically have to reject both bids that we've received and basically start the process over. I could be
long
wrong.
would that
Correct me
take?
if I'm wrong.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
How long would that take?
Several weeks.
We're already talking about several weeks on the, making sure the funds transfer and all that stuff, correct, Boyd?
I was anticipating if these issues were resolved, that within 2 weeks for our next meeting, we might be in a position to take action.
I would not recommend starting this process all over again. I don't actually think that's fair to those who put all that time and effort into the first bid that they submitted. That's my feeling. I think it's appropriate for the board to go back with the same information they had and this clarification and reconsider the issue and decide how they want to decide. That's how I feel they should do it. I don't think they should take new information. They should take the same information they had and just this one clarification and decide how they want to, what they want to recommend. That's my opinion. So
I agree. I think it's important to ethically go back and have a conversation about this. However, I feel like it makes me uncomfortable either way but giving the library board the capacity and the time to do that, I think is important. And I think giving them the ability to recommend who they think will do the best job for them is more important than anything else.
and ultimately, we have the final decision on this, so we can take into consideration the factors that have been outlined in the ordinance. So, unless anybody feels differently,
May I ask?
What's that?
Well, I just want to ask I want to ask a question just to make sure that we're okay. And this is of Harry, Boyd, Sam, and you too, Charlie, because you've been involved in this. The letter that was submitted by Mr. Hollingsworth doesn't seem like that should be something that that's a change from the RFP. And if you're allowing them to have a change from the RFP, and if the decision it comes down differently, again, it's the council that ultimately makes the decision. But
yeah, this is why I'm getting to, you gotta, to be fair to J&J, right? You kind of, and it's not reset, like they both put a lot of time into the proposal. I'm sure, Charlie, I don't think it was just one of them. Arguably, one of them, arguably you could argue that Wineset defined notice to proceed correctly and the other didn't.
Sure.
So that's why I'm thinking that way, because I get it. It's weird, Britt, if it's like, okay, we'll consider additional information now for Wineset, but J&J doesn't get any input now. That's not a fair process. And I know it sounds like a lot, but you're basically asking them to resubmit the same thing with one additional piece of information. And anybody else that wants to jump in at this point.
I'll say that we absolutely want to follow your legal guardrails, and then we want the council to be comfortable that the appropriate bidder is being awarded. And we're happy to have a second conversation, reconsider under this new light of the requirements to establish a responsible bidder and sort of bring focus to that. As Karen said, we weren't aware of that language. Not that that language clarifies much, responsible, but we were very much considering what I think Harry has just described, the components of deciding on a responsible bidder. But now we have some clarification, and we can have our discussion again with available information, and we're happy to do that.
And can Harry, can you be available to the library board if they need to understand the legal requirements for their decision?
Sure.
Okay.
That would
Good
make
idea.
me feel comfortable for sure.
And could we have that in writing, that what you were reading?
I'll send that to you,
I can
Karen.
get that to you, Karen.
Thanks.
All right. So why don't you guys have a meeting to reconsider, and I'll leave it to the library board to the extent you want to reconsider these proposals as quickly as you guys can make that happen, so that you guys can get this project moving as soon as possible. So if anybody feels otherwise, let me know. Otherwise, we'll let them go and they'll have another meeting. And please, Harry, if you could be available to them for that meeting in case they have any legal questions on their role, that would be great.
I will.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
So I make a motion to table the information about the library construction until the library board can meet and deliberate again.
Okay.
Harry, is that an appropriate motion? There's no issue to be tabled, as I'm aware.
How do I say it?
Well,
I think we
what's
can
on
just
the
ask if
agenda?
there's a
Let me
consensus.
go back
on
and
it.
look at the agenda.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is just a discussion,
Yeah.
so we really don't need a motion, I
Okay.
think.
So we're just going to move forward.
Yeah, I think we just say, do we have a consensus on this plan of action? And if we do, we'll move on.
Okay.
All right, so I trust that there's a consensus unless somebody speaks now. Okay. Now the next item on the, and Karen
Before we
and-
move on,
Mhm.
Charlie, yeah, thank you guys. I got a question for Harry, and this could be researched and discussed in another meeting, but how much of this sort of RFP process frustration that Karen's experiencing in the library board where they can't ask questions is self-inflicted versus state law? Like it's in our code and we could change it versus state law.
There is a state law, the Tennessee Municipal Purchasing Act, I think, which does not apply to Signal Mountain. In simplest terms, it doesn't apply to a municipality which is established by private act
Charter, yeah.
and which has a charter, so long as the charter provides you can set your own guidelines. Either the charter sets the purchasing guidelines or the charter authorizes there to be an ordinance to do so. And we have that ordinance. Now, as a practical matter, the ordinance and the state law are very similar.
Okay.
And I don't know this, but I suspect that we are limited in what we can do. We can't deviate probably much from what state law requires.
Okay. Fair enough.
Basically, they let us set the rules as long as our rules are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a general suggestion as to what they should be.
And you can do what you want to, but these have to be included.
Yeah. Okay. I was just checking if this is some kind of self-inflicted thing from the past where we're
No.
handcuffing our boards, or if it's just state law pretty much.
I think it is, and it really is self-inflicted in a way because government has evolved to the point that these regulations exist for a reason. And, you know, if this were private sector, there wouldn't be a single question. You pick who you like best and who you think is going to do the best job. with
And you
government.
ask all the questions you need to ask.
It's a little more complicated in that it's not just, maybe it may not just be who has the most experience. If all the bidders are experienced and have the ability to do the job, then that puts you in a little more difficult situation. I think that's what we're dealing with here.
All right, let's move on to the next item. That's the Recreation Board. And I believe Andrew asked for this to be on the agenda. So I will let him take it away.
Yeah, so we have, as I've sent out to y'all before our last meeting, in our code for the Recreation Board, a requirement that is unique to the Recreation Board. Basically, if you belong to a board of a sports league, you cannot provide advice beyond the Recreation Board. While I can see some reasons for that, namely, I could see where one league versus another might be jealous of that opinion. I'm fairly certain we consistently have open seats on this board where a recreation league could feel free to get some more direct representation. So this is something I want to discuss with y'all because, I mean, it's kind of one of those trade-offs. One, we don't hold any other board to a similar standard, where if there's a nonprofit organization heavily involved with that particular use of mountain asset, we don't say you cannot be on that board. And so it's a little bit of a unique standard that we're holding the Recreation Board to. And two, we're really probably missing out on the most knowledgeable people as to the condition of facilities, and ideas for improvement or working with these leagues that could raise funds, like the library board's done an excellent job of, so that we can not rely so heavily on taxpayer funds to maintain or improve these facilities. So I think we're handcuffing ourselves a bit with that requirement to folks that generally aren't going to be as knowledgeable and maybe understand the issues as much as people that are on those boards can be. And as you guys know, we have Dr. Bowman, who has submitted an application, who is the president of the baseball league. But I don't want to. This is not. I think those of us that know him, I think Dan mentioned he knows him, and I know Jared knows him and would endorse him as well, I'm sure. But it's not about the person. It's about this. I want you guys to think about whether this creates a problem. Does it create a problem to eliminate that language? And you know, if it does, let's talk about that. And if it doesn't, and the benefits are worth it, do we want to just eliminate that language so that members that are on recreation league boards can serve on our rec board?
I have an opinion about this, so I can start the discussion. I feel like you have an appearance of impropriety if you don't have an actual conflict of interest. If you're the president of let's take out the baseball league, you're the president of the football league, okay? And you're on the recreation board, and there's fundraising to be done, and the football league wants some money, and you're on the board that's going to give that money to the organization that you're the president of. You're in a tough spot, because if you go one way and give them money, then you have this appearance that you were favoring the board that you're the president, or the league you're the president of. If you go the other way, then the people involved in the youth football league might say, hey, that's not really fair to us. And you're bending over backwards, maybe to the detriment of the football league, because you're trying to avoid this appearance of impropriety. To me, if you want to be the president of your league, more power to you. If you want to be on the recreation board, then you can drop being the president of the league and be on the recreation board. But I don't think that you should do both, because there should be at least the appearance that the people on the recreation board are impartial. And I don't think you can get beyond that appearance if you're still the president of a league and on the board. That's my opinion. If anybody else has comments, let's hear them now.
I have one. I think the problem, for instance, with Dr. Bowman is not Dr. Bowman, it's those who are not represented. That's where the problem occurs. And perhaps, since just for the sake of discussion, we could consider modifying the language that seeks to have a representative from all recreation leagues. Now, whether or not you decide, you could say that can't be the president. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you could ask that there be a representation, as I said, and that would solve the problem. I think in a small town, Charlie, where I agree with what you were saying and totally get that, you're probably going to get involved if you have an interest. It's very much like the council thing. You know, people who get involved in these rec boards have an interest in recreation. People who get involved in the MAC board have an interest in something within the arts. People who are involved in the library board have an interest in the library. People involved in the tree board, you know, are probably going to have those kinds of specific interests. And so I don't think you're going to be able to get away from that, is what I'm saying. Would it be worth it for us to consider changing the language so we seek representation from all the rec leagues on the rec board?
I think that makes a lot of logical sense.
I
Well-
agree. And to both of your points, this is the board. We've got 2 seats open, and I think perpetually generally have seats open. So to the extent that football gets upset about what baseball's doing, I'm like, put in an application, you'll be on the board. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
it's like
exactly. The
we're not
opportunity
exactly,
exists now.
yeah, the opportunity to be on the board is there, and seems to perpetually be there. Now, maybe that won't always be the case, but absolutely encouraging those folks to be there. And they don't spend money. They make recommendations to us, perhaps, about how to spend money. But I think most of what the rec board does is having some input with Jared, and helping provide him vision of what we could do in the future. You know, one of the things I envision that we really need for our recreation sports is to become more like the MAC is becoming, and like the library board, where we're becoming more self-sufficient and raising some of those funds privately. And we have to work with that recreation board to make that happen. And so I think that's important, because those are going to be the guys that get those funds raised. They're going to be the ones that have an interest in doing that. If you exclude them from the board, you're making that communication difficult.
The soccer league is self-sufficient. So
The soccer league has a much better deal on its field situation than any.
Well,
of the other
I think
Yeah.
all of the sports leagues should strive to be like the soccer league, and I'm all for it if the sports leagues want to get together and create a nonprofit to raise funds and operate their league similar to what the soccer league does. I think that's fantastic. I think that if we were to change the language, I think it should be mandatory but not permissive. I don't think you can say you're allowed to be on the rec board if you want. Perhaps it should say, if you're the president of a sports league, you're automatically on the rec board. And then
That would be
That's
awesome.
interesting.
Yeah.
fill out rec board with other people too.
One other idea, talking to a citizen, was setting up a ad hoc committee that would have a seat on the rec board that is composed of the presidents of the other rec leagues. And that the other purpose that would serve is, like Charlie, you're mentioning, raising funds together to support these fields and things of that sort. kind of combining, there's a lot of things that could be done there. If you think about how poor we don't do the best, the rec leagues, because we leave it up to them, don't always do the best job of collecting out of town resident fees. That's missed revenue. All of our taxpayers are supporting those fields, maintenance of those fields, and it's important we do collect those fees. Well, we don't know how good the compliance is on that, and there's potentially the ability to invest in some tools that could verify addresses, things like that, and make sure the fees are charged and remitted to the town. That's things that ad hoc committee could potentially turn into that kind of private board over time. I would hope. Just another option. But at the same time, Charlie, we don't hold, and I don't think it's right. It would be right to hold, because as Dan said, small town, right? Those are the people that are going to be interested, are the people, and the people that are investing the time in it are going to be the ones that have all the ideas for the board. But we don't have the same requirement for folks on Signal Mountain Preservation Fund and the MAC board. So if we're going to hold this board to that standard, we should be holding them all to that standard.
Yeah, well, we don't have more than one preservation fund interested in the MAC. So it's a different scenario. You have football, baseball, lacrosse, all these different leagues. And if the president of baseball is allowed to be on the board, and obviously the president of lacrosse could try to be on the board as well. But if you run out of spots, then you got baseball represented on the board. And every time a decision on money is made and lacrosse gets shafted, they're going to be like, yeah, well, that's because baseball's on the board. I mean, it just, and then if baseball, bends over backwards not to favor baseball, then the people that are involved in the baseball are going to be like, we're getting screwed because we have a guy on the board. So to me, it just creates that appearance of impropriety. I don't think the MAC poses that same problem, because it's.
What if somebody had a different vision for what should be happening at the MAC? I'm not saying anybody does, just, it's the same situation. You're just inserting specific circumstances of today into how our code is getting applied. And that's like saying Dr. Bowman, if I came in and said Dr. Bowman's great and that's why we should change it, which is not what I'm saying.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying that the ad hoc committee isn't a good idea to have them represented on the board because they're representing all the leagues, or to have all the league presidents automatically be on the board, plus whomever else, however many spots other than that you want to fill. Those are ideas to think about. I'm just saying that to change the rule and allow somebody to be on the board if they're the president of a league creates an appearance of impropriety. And that I think that's why that was put in there. I don't know, because I wasn't involved in it, but I'm guessing that was, maybe they had some sort of problem and they wanted to address it. But
I actually asked that question. I spoke to several citizens about this that have had experience on the rec board and that are very involved in physical fitness of children and adults on the mountain. And all of them thought, man, that's a good idea to put somebody who's the president of a rec league on the board. And my wondering the whole time was, why can't all of them? I love that idea. I think having that voice of everybody, it could create for some interesting meetings. However, I think that when we're looking at putting one person and allowing only the people that can fill the positions that are available is creating what I would call a lose-lose situation. I don't think there's any way to make it something that would be great for our community every time, because every time a decision's made, one group is going to be able to claim that the other group has been shafted. So I don't, and really, I don't know that would happen, because I know that one of the most beautiful things about our town is the level of commitment that the citizens have to issues and to organizations like our rec leagues. I just think they're second to none. And I think the people that work in them and volunteer for them are absolutely amazing. But I do feel like that we're looking at a lose-lose in this capacity. But if we make it so that all presidents are able to serve, that's something that could be a win-win all around.
I think the ability for them to work cooperatively is so important. And then it sort of it infuses new ideas. So when we're trying to, figure out field space and some of the challenges that these leagues face at different times, if they're all getting in a room together to discuss these things, it's only going to help our town department, because you've got other stakeholders there who can really sort of, help come up with solutions that maybe have ideas that wouldn't have been thought of previously. So I'm with Vicky. I think that this is a really good suggestion that Dan gave us, and I think we should, try it.
Can we do that? Require how would that work?
That was why I raised my hand a little while ago. I
Okay.
think that's going to be the issue.
I only see 4 people on my screen, so.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
If,
Go ahead.
The idea of requiring the leagues to participate in that manner might be something that has to be somewhat transitional, that we couldn't just unilaterally do that and expect immediate participation. That's something we need to kind of work with them on. And it ultimately is going to be a pretty large board at that point.
Well, we have a board of 11 on the library. I think we can make it work.
Right. And just to add to maybe soften the requirement for the president, Charlie, just, again, we're just discussing now, but give each organization an opportunity to have a seat that's set aside for that.
Yeah.
And we would have to figure, I don't know how many sports leagues we have, because the president may not be the right person for it.
How do you recognize? See, you run in then you have to, it's like what the new sport that comes.
They would choose. Yeah, right. And they would have to.
The town officially has to say, okay, lacrosse is a sport now. Go rewind 10 years. You might, is this a hobby or is it a sport?
Well, I mean that you had a good idea about an ad hoc committee. Maybe at the sports leagues form an ad hoc committee, and then they get a seat. The ad hoc committee gets a seat on the board of the rec board. So,
I hate doing another committee, but yeah, I
well, that's among the rec leagues to create their that ad hoc committee.
Even if
it's not sports, by the way, it's leagues. The idea was that you required the leagues to be members of the board. So Signal Mountain has Quidditch might be a sport, I guess, nowadays. But there's no Quidditch league on the mountain, so they don't get a seat at the board.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, I mean, let's continue discussing this now that it's been raised, if that's okay. If we don't have a conclusion tonight, is that all right? And just keep discussing the idea of how to do that.
Everybody, if you could put more thought into it. Dan got a great idea there. Obviously, right now we have 5 members. Is that correct, Boyd, on a 7-seat board? Of course, none of whom are.
That's right. And I think we have 2 applications right now.
Yes, the one that would not be allowed by this rule. Yeah.
Could I ask a staff direction if we have consensus for Boyd to just come up with some general language, what that might look like and what it might entail if we were to change the makeup of that board. And in doing so, determine how many rec sports, would need to be represented before we fill those 2 seats, because it might be the right time to do it since we've got a couple open anyway.
Yeah, that's
You
fine.
okay with that, Boyd?
Sure.
Well, I don't know about needing to do it before we fill the 2 seats. We only have 2 applications right now, and one person is a president and right now not permitted. The other person is not. So we could add that person if we wanted to put at least one, fill at least one open position. That person, Aaron Woodrow, is not on the agenda for tonight. We can bring this up at the next meeting, and we can decide, Dan, if we want to wait on that. But I think this discussion might take a little time, and might as well fill at least one spot if we can.
Yeah,
so-
and that was a good application too. Forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can. We'll talk about filling the one spot then that we can fill in next meeting, and we can also talk more if Boyd can come up with some ideas, and we all can, on how we might implement better representation among the leagues on the rec board. Okay. The next item is the municipal landscape ordinance. I'm not sure if anybody's had a chance to read all of the red lines and stuff. Dan and Susanna probably know a lot about this, because this was something that was discussed and talked about before the election. I don't know if this is a long discussion. It's already 8 o'clock, so we might not want to discuss it now if it's going to be a long discussion. And I will ask Dan and Susanna for their thoughts on that.
Dan, I don't know. My thoughts are that we spent a long time working on this language, adapting it. The tree board has spent, I don't know how many hours working to update this language. I think the tree board and the council met together to go over these changes and discuss the recommendations. And so I'm pretty comfortable with the way the language reads and what's being presented, but you all haven't had the benefit of participating in the discussion. Dan, what do you think? Or Boyd, you want to jump in?
If I may, there have been revisions since this came to council last. That's one of the reasons it was off the radar a little longer than anticipated. Council decided to hold it over for the new council, but then there were some revisions made as well. So that was one of my questions is, how we wanted to proceed, if we want to just touch on those changes with the tree board or what. So I wasn't really sure how we would want to proceed since it had been revised some since it was last discussed.
If I may,
The-
go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I was going to suggest that we table this and have it at the top of the discussion at the next meeting, because it's late and because I suspect this is a topic worthy of significant discussion.
Can I ask just a clarification question then? I printed off the stuff at the end of our packet on this, but it's unclear to me. There's several revisions of the same language. What each one, or and maybe that can be sent out in an email later. Like first one is
If
this, and
Can all the red lines be put into one document so we know that this is one thing? We can look at all the changes that are being.
I think we may be looking at different options. Is that correct or no? I don't.
Yeah, I'll see if we can, at the very least, you guys can go to the website and pull up the existing language. And I'll see, like I said, there are several revisions. I'll see how much we can clean it up without watering down the clarity on what's changing,
Well-
and get that out as soon as possible.
Yeah, it seemed like we got two versions and both were redlined, but they were the same thing. So it seems like, is that not right? Because
There were some slight differences in some of
No,
these.
the content was different, but it was the same provisions. That's what I meant. It was
Yes.
the same provisions, but they had, one had certain red lines and the other one had maybe some different red lines. I'm guessing that's what Boyd's talking about with the new updates, but it just would be nice if all the red lines could be put in one version of the code so that we can look at all the red lines at one time.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay. Yeah, let's put it the discussion item A for the next meeting and we'll talk about it. If that's okay with everybody?
If it's all right, I'll have someone from the tree board join us for the sake of any clarification we may need.
Okay, sounds good.
Be helpful.
And I'll just mention, I think I talked to the chair of that committee via email, and he indicated that they are planning to have a meeting toward the end of the month. I think it's so that'll actually be after your next meeting. So if there is any direction, they'll be able to follow up on that.
Got it. All right, thanks, Sam. Okay. The next is the manager's report.
I'll try to make this quick because, as you said, it is getting late. But just want to let you know we have had the pre-construction meeting for Wild Ridge. That's moving forward. We're working on finishing language on the development agreement, and are waiting the reclamation bond, and they should be pretty much off and running. A couple projects that I wanted to just kind of bounce off council. In the personnel committee meeting, we started working through some of the salary survey information, specifically for fire and police. And through that discussion, really came to I think, a consensus that we really need to do a full classification and compensation study. It's been many years since we've done that. The company that we worked with on salary surveys, Burris Thompson and Associates, does that work. And interestingly enough, just before that meeting, someone posted a question on a forum for the City Managers Association as to an example of an RFP, or do you just have somebody that you can recommend? And I was, even knowing they do a lot of work in the area, I was amazed at how many municipalities said Burris Thompson. We've used them for years. We would recommend them. They do a lot of municipal work, and so I contacted them and have provided them some information, and
You can close that.
surprisingly, they think they could get us something back before we have to make final decisions on budget. And I don't anticipate that the cost will rise to the level for council approval. So if we can work that out, I'm going to move forward with that. So we will have good, fresh information on our classification and comp plan.
Yeah, I think I talked with a firefighter named Austin. I can't remember Austin's last name, but he had put together a really impressive proposal, I guess. I assume that's you guys are looking into that. Is that right?
I'm not directly familiar with that. That would come through Chief Mitchell, and I would talk to him about that. Yes. So I will inquire on that. But this is a much broader industry and again, townwide plan review.
Okay, and this was something that came out of the personnel committee?
This, yes, as we, and Dan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but as we started working through the salary information and making the comparisons, and we really moved to the point that we need to do a more comprehensive look at our compensation and pay plan. One of the things that'll help us do is make sure we're doing an apples to apples comparison. The amount of hours people work, are the jobs in a given category actually the same, and things like that.
I think I would just add that those were organic questions from that meeting. I remember Kathy Corley using almost that exact same language. And it's a really good personnel committee that we've got that's looking at things and has good experience. So yeah, it's unfolding like it should.
That's awesome. So
Okay.
I have concerns about the idea of attrition. How much does it cost to train our folks up here versus how long do they work for us before they see greener pastures other places, and then we have to go back through the process of finding somebody and training them again. So I think I don't know, that's just something I've been thinking about in considering both police and fire. I think that we need to be able to look at that and compare which makes more sense for our community, to raise pay or to lower the cost of training. I don't know, but I think that we could be on a little bit of a carousel. We train people, get them where they really are good at what they do, and then they can go somewhere else for more money. I think that's tragic for our community.
And that's something that we've dealt with for a very long time. And it's cyclical. When I took this position, we were a revolving door. I mean, we hired somebody in, trained them, and they were gone. So we're starting to have issues now, but we're still nowhere near where we were before in that regard. And the idea is to keep from getting there again. So that's the idea of taking an in-depth look and see where we need to make corrections and try to hold on to our good people.
Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing real quick, the Playhouse has for a long time had drainage issues. We've discussed this with council in the past. With the library project, we kind of looked to see if there's any way we could combine some work there, but they're really two different things. So we are going to be moving forward, getting a topographical survey and getting an engineer to do a hydrology study on that area to see what we can do to resolve the major issues that we're having with water drainage through that town facility. So that is moving forward. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Do we have any update on the Old Town sidewalk project? If that's been, if the engineers gotten started, have they signed the contract?
Yes, we've done the extension, and they have been working the whole time. The process we worked through did not stop the process for them. So they are continuing to work on that. If I can pull this up real quick, my computer logged off. And maybe you can glean a little more from it than I'm able to, but they're currently working on the profiles along the sidewalks. And from there, they'll move to do cross sections and try to identify areas where they can reduce earthwork and in the design. So that's where they are right now. But again, we did not lose work time during the negotiations on, for the change order.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to other business. Do we have any reports from the mayor or council? All right, I'd like to mention something. It seems like COVID numbers are going down. We're apparently doing a great job in Tennessee of vaccinating people. And I think we need to look at reopening some of our facilities and starting with the recycling center. If everybody's required to wear a mask, it seems like we can have that opened. So, and also look into a plan really of opening the rest of our town facilities that's consistent with the way Tennessee is going. We may have a Super Bowl surge, who knows, but right now, when you look and see the numbers, they're all going down in Tennessee. And so can you, Boyd, I guess, look into reopening the recycling center with the requirement that people wear masks, obviously still, but just allowing people to park and bring their recycling in like they did in the past, rather than 3 at a time?
Yes, sir.
And then I would suggest that you have a plan to reopen the rest of the town facilities, or at least we talk about that maybe at the next meeting, what that plan might be to reopen the rest of the town facilities. Because I'm guessing, unless there's another executive order, which I don't expect, we might be having in-person meetings after the month of February. And if we're having in-person meetings, it seems inconsistent with having all of our town facilities closed. So we just need to plan, by the next meeting, tell us what you think a plan might be to reopen everything. And I'm not sure everything that's closed, but the gym, people have asked me about opening the gym. I don't know about that. And the town hall and the recycling center. Those are the main ones I know about. So let's kind of formulate a plan and try to implement that in the near future.
If I may, I know many of you received, I think it went to all of your town emails, an email about the library reopening, and just want to point out in that regard, that would be a decision for the library board. They hold a little different position than most of the other boards in the town, so that would fall to them as opposed to council. Certainly does not preclude council from providing input or requesting, but just wanted to point that out because of that email coming in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anybody else have anything to report? All right, any reports from committees or boards?
We covered the personnel committee already, so.
Yeah.
I would like, can I add one thing, Charlie, to the recycle thing?
Yeah.
Just as an opportunity. It's not really an argument for or against. Andrew, you have mentioned polling. This seems like the perfect opportunity for polling of citizens. And so, I mean, we don't have to go into it now, but if you have some ideas, I've heard from citizens who like things working the way they do now. And some recycle centers work exactly like our recycle center works now, where a limited number of people unload and you drive past. So it would be nice, as we discuss this, to get a handle on that somehow.
Yeah.
So if you have suggestions for that, maybe bring them to another council meeting.
So yeah, the polling situation, I will be bringing that up at some point. But as with many things, government, it's more nuanced, and there's a lot more rules that need to be considered than you would imagine. So I'm doing that right now. I'm not sure what our options are right now without developing a more formal system.
Okay, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I'm
No,
just
no,
saying
no,
maybe that's
no.
something to do
Excellent.
anyway. Yeah.
And you're right. That would be an awesome candidate for that.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure we have the capacity to do it right now.
I don't think we do, but I mean, for those listening, if you want to, send somebody an email or call your representative or whatever, let somebody know your opinion one way or the other, that would be great. I know a lot of people that I talk to want it to be open, but that I don't represent everybody, obviously, in that what I'm saying. So, but I think that if we're looking at the rest of the state and the city, the trend is toward reopening. So I mean, the governor is allowing anybody to go to high school sporting events. If everybody can fill a gym and go to high school sporting events, we ought to be able to wear a mask and go recycle without having to sit in the car line. So I just think it's time.
Yeah, I think Dan's maybe more alluding to this may actually be a better system, just not from a contagion COVID standpoint, but I mean, I took recycling there. I was like, this actually works quite well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might be a better means of delivering the service and just pulling.
If we let people vote when they go recycle,
There you go.
what their preference is,
Put a chalkboard up, and this side's
keep a tally.
keep it, and
Fill
this is back to the old way, and just put a tally mark on it. Yeah.
Is there a reason why we couldn't do just an easy Google form on our Facebook page? I can see you nodding. So what's the thought behind why we can't do that? Just because we can't control who votes over and over?
These things are totally unscientific. So I mean,
Yeah.
something like that. Like if you go to ESPN, you can vote on their question of the day, and it's a lot of fun to see, what the results are. But they're pretty unscientific.
There get to be a lot of legal requirements when you start polling citizens on things that are, so we can work through them, but it's going to take some time.
And I'll just say that the response we get to various Facebook posts varies widely. I mean, it's, we may post something we think will get a lot of engagement and it gets, 3 likes. Whereas it may, something that we might not have expected to get as many may garner 100 likes. It's just,
I would bet you will get 10,000 responses more than the citizens of the town that's old enough to Facebook if you put that one on there.
Oh my gosh, I think it would be overwhelming.
All right, well, we'll discuss it
live
next
here.
time. The only other board thing if nobody else has anything, I'll just mention that, we talked a little bit about the BZA. I'm asking the planning commission to take up a certain issue that the BZA discussed. That'll come to the town council eventually. So that's that for that discussion. Does anybody else have any other committee or board information that we haven't discussed? All right, anything else? Other business? Okay, we are adjourned.